Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Politics. Today, I want to share with you why I am persuaded that the Luo community will be the one determining who becomes the president of this republic come 2027. If that is something you are interested in, stay tuned till the end. And if you're watching this channel for the first time, take a second, subscribe, so that you are notified whenever we produce videos of this nature. Otherwise, let us jump into the subject of the day. I have told you before that Kenya's politics is not so different from the politics of other nations. Let nobody lie to you that, oh, we are in a developed world. This is how. No. Politics is always about regional strength. That is why, even in the United States, they know that if you were to win this state and the other state, you are likely to be president. Why? Based on the history of that country, people who win this and that state have always ended up winning the overall race. And so that is the same thing with Kenya. In Kenya, we don't have states. What we have here are communities. And 3 communities in this country decides who becomes president, at least since the introduction of multi-party democracy in 92. The 3 communities are the Kikuyus, the Luos, and the Kalenjin. Now, this does not mean that other communities do not play a role or don't matter in the election. No. Just like in the US example we gave earlier, it doesn't mean that some states do not matter. They do. However, there are certain states that you must win to be president. The same thing, there are communities in Kenya that will determine who becomes president. And I have told you, it doesn't mean that the rest don't matter. It's just that these 3 are very influential. For instance, I said the Kikuyu. The Kikuyu alone may not be a significant force. However, they influence other communities. For instance, Kikuyus have a lot of influence over the people of Embu and the people of Meru. A lot of political influence. Mostly, if you check their recent history, they have been voting together. That is the same thing that applies with Luos. Luos alone may not be a significant number. However, they have serious influence over certain Luya community, like those in Vihiga, Busia, and Kakamega. And in the recent history, Luos have also, that is since 2013, Luos have also had serious sway over Kisis. And so, Luos supporting you may mean that you have the support of Kisis, you have the support of Luyas, and that is a big support base. The same with Kalenjin. The Kalenjins have serious influence among the communities in the Rift Valley. And so if you have their support, chances are that you will also have the support of the said communities. That is why we were saying these 3 communities determine who becomes president. So how does it work? Out of the 3 communities, 2 of them have to come together and support a presidential candidate. Whichever presidential candidate they support will always win the presidency. We have real life example, ladies and gentlemen. This is not some guesswork. In 2002, Kikuyus and Luos came together. Guess what? They produced President Kibaki. Kalenjins during that time sided with Uhuru Kenyatta thanks to their loyalty to Moi. But come 2007, tables turned. Luos abandoned Kikuyus and sided with Kalenjins. Remember, Luos and Kalenjin voted opposite ways in 2002. However, in 2007, the Luos and Kalenjin came together behind Raila Odinga. And those of you who are realistic, those of you who wants to deal with reality, know that even though you didn't support Raila, he won that election. There is no way in a country like ours where you have parliamentary majority, you have the most councillors. By then, we didn't have MCS, to the point that even the majority in Nakuru were members of ODM. There is no way you can have parliamentary majority and all that and then lose the presidency in Kenya's context. It has not happened before. It will not happen even in the future. And so I believe Kibaki decided to put his interest above the interest of the nation and decided to serve a second term, and the rest is history. Understanding the reality on the ground, Uhuru Kenyatta did not say, you see, Kikuyus sided with Kibaki and they won. I will still use that strategy and win 2013. No. Uhuru knew the reality, that there was no way Kibaki would have won with the Kikuyus when Luos and Kalenjins were united. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, if you remember, Uhuru went for William Ruto, even though there were still constraints between the communities. They put those aside and decided to work together. Uhuru would have gone for Luos, but Raila Odinga was also vying, and there was no way Raila Odinga was going to be Uhuru's running mate. And Uhuru also was not willing to be anybody's running mate. So Ruto was the compromise. He has the Kalenjin behind him, which has significant influence, and he was ready to be a deputy. Still wanted to be a president, but was not bothered to be someone's running mate. And so Uhuru went for Ruto. That combination, ladies and gentlemen, of Kalenjins and Kikuyu won the 2013 election. And if you remember what I told you earlier, that there is no way you can win the presidency and lose the National Assembly or the MCS. In 2013, that is the first time we were implementing the devolution, the devolved system. In 2013, Uhuru Kenyatta had the most MPs, that is Jubilee Coalition, had the most MPs. Whether it was women rep, whether it was senators, they had the most. And of course, Jubilee had the most members of county assembly. So even though Raila claimed that that election had been stolen, deep down he knew that there was no way he was going to win against a combined force of Kalenjin and Kikuyus. That is the same combination that won Uhuru re-election, even though people had said that he had a very mediocre first term. But he was overwhelmingly re-elected. The votes he got in his second term were more than the ones that he gathered in the first term. And even when a repeat poll was called, Uhuru still got a lot of votes, over 7 million votes, in a repeat poll that was boycotted by ODM. So you can see that that combination was going to win Uhuru. Even if Uhuru was to go for a third term, he was going to win if that combination of Kalenjin and Kikuyu remained intact. This is why when Uhuru had a handshake with Raila Odinga, the first order of day was to start finding ways to separate Kalenjins from Kikuyus, revive the post-election violence, make Kikuyus feel like they are owed and these are the worst people to associate with. They tried everything, including dropping leaflets, so that the Kikuyu and Kalenjin cannot be together. The challenge is he had picked a wrong candidate. So Kikuyus were not going to line behind Raila Odinga because they are persuaded Raila Odinga is a bad person. You remember that even though Luos supported Kibaki overwhelmingly, actually the turnout in Luo Nyanza was higher than that in Central. Even though they supported Kibaki overwhelmingly, immediately they were in power, Kibaki and everybody tried to make sure that there was no way Raila Odinga, who represented the Luos, would ascend to power, to the point that even though he won in 2007, they still stole his election. So this is something that was so obvious in 2018 when Uhuru went for Raila. It was obvious that Kikuyus were going to walk out, and walking out they did. And so when they walked out, they remained with Kalenjins to support Ruto against Raila Odinga. Okay? And that combination, the combination of Kikuyu and Kalenjin, is what won the 2022 election. If Ruto wanted an easy re-election, all he had to do was to maintain this combination of Kikuyus and Kalenjins. And he would have been re-elected overwhelmingly in 2027, whether he delivered or not. You doubt me? Let me give you an example. During the first days of Ruto's administration, the Azimio people led by Raila were on the road saying Ruto is the worst president and saying that the cost of living was high and saying all manner of things. What did the Kikuyus do? Did they join them in saying, yeah, by the way, we agree? No. They defended Ruto's government. The same things they are accusing Ruto of now, they defended Ruto against them then. So you see, once you bring in Luos, Kikuyus get out. It is what I was telling you. You bring Luos in, Kikuyus get out. Because somebody who was saying that the cost of living has gone down is now telling you that the cost of living has gone up. If you ask them, can you share any evidence to that effect? They don't have. They'll just call you Kaongo sycophant and etc. Why? Because their political interests have changed. And it is understandable. That is how politics work. People are more emotional than they are rational. So they will tell you things that they don't particularly believe they can defend, but it makes their case look normal. For instance, if I say that Ruto has not delivered anything he promised, and for that reason I want him to be one term, that sounds normal, sounds logical. But if you try to tell them what Ruto has done, they then now get angry, and it is understandable. That is how politics work. People will not now want confronting facts. You cannot tell me something that is going to make me look bad. So I want my own reality, and that reality is that Ruto has not done anything. So that is how. But I digress. What you may be asking is, if Ruto knew that all he has to do was to maintain the Kalenjin Kikuyu alliance and get re-elected, why risk? Why risk provoke Kikuyus by bringing in Raila Odinga? Well, Ruto made a very hard decision. And that's why I tell you, he is a president you may want to be proud of, even if you don't support him. There are some decisions he makes that only someone who cares about this country would. I have told you, Ruto would be re-elected if he maintained the status quo, making sure that the country's resources are shared between Kalenjin and Kikuyu as it was being done under Uhuru Kenyatta. If he does that, he is okay. He would be re-elected. But Ruto said no. I have an opportunity to correct a few things. And one of them is an equal distribution of resources. It is true, we don't have a lot of resources. Kenya, while it is ranked as a low middle income, Kenya is still struggling. So we don't have a lot of resources. But the few resources we have been distributed in a very skewed manner. Some areas have been abandoned completely. If you have the privilege of traveling across the country, you will realize that there are things you really complain about in your area that are considered luxury in other areas. And that is an example of unequal distribution of resources. There are villages somewhere where you would find that they have tap water. Okay? There are villages where there are tap water. But that is not something you would think of in Turkana and other places. No. Those places, you would understand why they feel like they're not part of Kenya. Because of an equal distribution of resources. So Ruto said this: I will bite the bullet, and I will bring everybody on board, and I'll make sure that we have equal distribution of resources. And by the fact that he brought in Raila Odinga, who was representing half of Kenya, so if you want to unite the country, if you want to ensure equal distribution of resources, then number one, who got 50 point something, and number two, who got 48 point something, come together and you've united the country. Okay? So for some reason, this is something that Kikuyus didn't accept, and so they walked out. That leaves us, ladies and gentlemen, in a very interesting situation. We are back to 1992. when Kalenjins were on their own, Kikuyus were on their own, and Luos were on their own. For those of you who were not there then, Kalenjins still stuck with their Moi. Kikuyus split their votes between Matiba and Kibaki, overwhelmingly voting, majority of voting for Matiba, of course, and Luos voted for Jaramogi. You get that? The same applied in 1997. Kalenjin stuck with Moi, Kikuyus went to Kibaki, and Luos voted for Raila. For those two elections, the three communities that define who wins did not vote together. They were split, and when they are split, the incumbent had a very easy time to win. That is why Moi won those two elections. But after that, I think people realized that if they go alone, the incumbent will always win. So after that, they decided, these three influential communities, they decided to form alliance. So the alliance between two would produce president. Like I said, we have found ourselves in the situation we were in 97, where currently Kalenjins are likely to still vote for Ruto. Kikuyus, to punish Ruto and teach him a lesson, whatever the lesson is, are likely to vote for anybody else but Ruto. And when I say likely, I am not talking of 100% vote. That never happens, ladies and gentlemen. So if you are a Kikuyu or somebody from Mount Kenya who supports Ruto, don't feel like your support has been dismissed here, that it is not recognized. No. It is just the same case as it was for us who were supporting President Ruto from Luoland. Majority of the people from Luoland supported Raila Odinga. And so when you give an analysis, you use what the majority from that particular region have done. And in this case, majority of the Kikuyus, even if you did an opinion poll in Mount Kenya, I was there for some time last week, they will tell you that they are waiting to teach Ruto a lesson. So majority of them will vote against President Ruto. Some number will still vote for Ruto. Even Raila Odinga, even though Kikuyus had rebelled with Uhuru Kenyatta and were for Ruto, he still got 800,000 votes there. So majority will vote elsewhere, but some number will still vote for Ruto. But that is not what we look at. We are looking at where will the majority be. And I'm telling you, majority of Mount Kenya people, unless something happens, will be voting against President Ruto. Majority of the Kalenjin, unless something happens, will be voting for President Ruto. That leaves Luo to make a decision. If Luos today decided to continue with the alliance they have with Ruto and move this into 2027, that will lead us to 207, a combination of Kalenjins and Luos, and they will win the election. If you have a combined force of William Ruto and Raila Odinga, you will most definitely win the election. Just look at the 2022 figures. You will see that Kalonzo combined with Rigathi and Eugene, those are no match for a force between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, even Rigathi knows that, and his team, they know that. That is why when Raila lost AUC, you saw Rigathi literally praising Luos as good people and begging Raila Odinga to join them. Even the other day when he was on Obina, he was a very bitter soul with Raila Odinga. He was saying Raila Odinga has betrayed, I don't know who, and what. He was saying the narrative of the so-called Raila has betrayed the Gen Zs. Why? Because he knows there is no political formation in this country that can be a match to a combined force of William Ruto and Raila Odinga. Rigathi knows that. And that is why they are very scared. That is why the bitterness is going to the roof. That is only if they continue with this relationship they have now. But should Luos change their mind in the middle and say, no, after consulting ourselves, we don't see whether we should work with Ruto, and for some reason, because this is politics, join the Rigathi camp, if they did, then that Rigathi camp will produce the president of the Republic come 2027. That is based on historical facts. If Raila Odinga joined Rigathi Gachagua, whoever they will support in 2027 is likely to win. Now, there is another option. What if Luos decided that, no, we are also voting for Raila Odinga. We must have our candidate. And Raila Odinga vied. Then we go to 97 and 92, where Kikuyus will be voting for somebody else, Luos will be voting for another person, and Kalenjin will be sticking with somebody. The beauty is that Ruto will be the incumbent, and the incumbency favors. When these three communities are divided, the incumbent always wins. And that means Ruto will be elected, whether not by a majority, whether not overwhelmingly or with a landslide, he will be re-elected. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying Luos will decide. If they continue with Ruto, Ruto is going to be re-elected overwhelmingly. If they join Rigathi Gachagua, Ruto's second term may be very difficult to achieve. But if they decide to vie to have their own candidate come 2027, then Ruto, being the incumbent, has a high chance of winning re-election. Even if they were to go for a runoff, Ruto still has a chance. The incumbency favors him. He will still win. That's what I wanted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. That Luos, this time, they're the ones to decide. Whichever side they will support is going to win. My belief, based on how I understand what's going on, chances are that Luos are going to stick with Ruto up to 2032. If I'm proven right, then Ruto is going to be re-elected. He will have a good chance to deliver on other promises as he continues into 2032. And chances are that after 2032, the presidency might go to Nyanza or Western, because that combination that won 2027, that is if Luos and the Kalenjin still stick together, will still win 2032. It has happened before. The combination that won 2013 is the combination that won 2017, is the combination that won 2023. So if Kalenjin and Luos combination can win 2027, it will win 2032, it will win 2037, and so on and so on. That is my view, ladies and gentlemen. If you agree, give this video a like and share it with friends. If you have a different opinion, please share that in the comment section. Let us engage. Nobody has monopoly of opinion. I just share what my views on subjects are. You can share your view. I will learn from you. You can learn from me. And then we grow as a country. Because in a country where people don't talk because they have differences in political opinion, that is a dying country. And that is not what we want. That is why this channel exists. It's a channel for conversation. We tell you the unpopular version because perhaps you are used to videos where you are told shocking, Ruto slapped by so and so. So here we just base it on what is available. I could be wrong. You come in, we argue, we debate, we share. Otherwise, if you want to know why I am 100% persuaded that Ruto is the president Kenya needed, watch this video.